Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for showing up again for our training Tuesdays. And today is a special one because we have two amazing speakers, and we're going to start off with Mrs. Maximiller Wattanga, who is the CEO and founder of Blue Castle Consulting Limited, and she's a full member of Institute of Human Resource Management, which is IHRM here in Kenya. She has a vast 12 years experience in human resource, and she's very passionate about employee wellness and recruitment selection. So today we are focusing on how to manage people management ideally, which is something everyone resonates with and everyone has had an issue to deal with, especially during this pandemic season. So we look forward to learning from you, Maxi, and we'll introduce the next speaker when she's ready to speak. So Maxi, the floor is yours. So it's okay. To save on time, we can start with Elizabeth then.
Yeah.
All right. So we have our second speaker, or rather now first speaker, who is Elizabeth Njau. Mrs. Elizabeth Njau, who is the CEO of Clientive Consulting, which is a human resource management located here in Nairobi. And her years in business are over 15 years in the same field, and she has served various roles from HR assistant to HR officer, senior manager HR, HR manager, and now HR director of Clientive Consulting. Now, Elizabeth is passionate about helping the less privileged members of the society, and she takes care of the environment. It's something she's very passionate about, and she's keen on mentoring young HR professionals. Over the vast years that Elizabeth has had her experience, she has had hands-on experience in HRM as a member of 2 school management boards. She's also a member of the Human Capital Committee of the Royal Nairobi Golf Club, a member of the Institute of Human Resource Management, which is IHRM in Kenya, and the Kenya Institute of Management. We commonly know it as KIM. She's also a member of the International Leadership Management, ILM, and a parent to 2 amazing young adults. Now, at a business level, she loves enabling many organizations to achieve their goals by putting in place HR processes and procedures, staff training and development, team building, culture change and organization, design and HR strategies, among many other activities. We all know her as the ever-smiling Elizabeth Njau, and today we are keen on learning from you. Karibu.
How much time do you have? Just remind me.
So we now start at 7:05. You can keep your 20 minutes of presentation. If you can manage to make it shorter, the better.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have this moment to share with you about how we can handle issues in our organizations during this time. And I will be discussing about the following. One, we'll just touch on the communication, workplace culture, workplace safety, employee medical scheme, internal policies, procedures, and organizational design. We start off with communication. As we all know, communication is basically about exchanging information, either verbally or written, or using any other medium that one may choose to communicate with, depending on the audience. So how do we effectively communicate in our organizations during this pandemic, during this time of crisis where nobody seems to know what will happen in the next 2 months? What do we do about our organizations? What do we do about the people? First of all, when you're communicating, endeavor to keep your communication simple, clear, and human. In terms of simple, avoid jargon, avoid complicated language. Make sure that your target audience will understand your language. Be clear and concise, avoid giving unnecessary many stories. And always remember that you're speaking to human beings and they have feelings, they have emotions. People will never forget how you made them feel. Ensure the content is right. Is the content right for the audience that you are talking to? Is that what they should know? And are you sure about the information that you're communicating? Then use appropriate communication channel. For example, you can choose to call a meeting, you can choose to send an email, you can choose to call a town hall meeting, or what in other organizations is called a kamukonji, so that enhances the communication that you're going to send. It is also recommended that one is very honest and open about the communication that they send out. Remember that human beings have got brains. They can tell when you are lying. They can see your body language. They can tell that you're taking them for a ride. So be honest as much as possible and be open. It's always good also to provide guidelines to employees and customers and general public in these times. For example, we've seen organizations send out guidelines on their working hours, how they can be reached, who is the contact person, and so on and so forth. So when you're communicating, always tell the employees and even your customers what guidelines are relevant to follow during these times, because those are the guidelines they will use as they work. You should also empower your supervisors or managers to communicate. It should not always be you as the CEO or owner of the business communicating all the time. You need to have other people communicate on your behalf so that they also feel part and parcel of what you are communicating, your vision, your dream, your message, etc., etc. Also be open to feedback and take action. Many a times we communicate, and when somebody says something we do not agree with, we tend to shut them down or to make them feel like they should keep quiet. That is wrong. We should be open-minded and be open to feedback. And when you get that feedback, please take necessary action. For example, if employees are complaining that something should be addressed, please make sure that you address that issue or you say what you're going to do about it. Do not just take feedback and keep quiet. Provide regular updates. This is depending on the kind of industry, organization you are in. Some organizations require much more regular updates than others. So depending on your industry, decide whether it's monthly or quarterly or weekly or whatever else you may decide. Also recognize both the formal and informal communication. There are different forms of communication in the organization, and many of us tend to focus more on the formal communication, which may be a pitfall because the informal communication is also very important, commonly known as the grapevine in an organization. And that is where you really need to be, because that tells you exactly what is happening on the ground. Those small comments that people make in the organization, like sasa huyu boss anafikiria aje, mbona anatubeba hivyo, mbona wamedecide hivi, why weren't we asked? Those are that communication, the grapevine, informal communication is very, very important. As the leader or CEO of the organization, be on the front line, role model what you're talking about, say what you mean and mean what you say. It should never be the other way around, because people just start thinking you're playing games. Now we can move on to workplace culture. As you all know, culture comprises of shared values, beliefs, and habits that generally determine the way people behave in an organization. For example, the way they behave, the way they act, the way they perform their work, the way they relate, etc., etc. So during this current pandemic, we are all being forced to change our culture in our organizations. literally speaking, so many things in the organizations have changed. There was no time to think about it. It hit, and some things had to be changed, which effectively affects the culture in the organization. So what can we do in these crisis times in terms of our culture? We need to change our values. Our values are what we believe in, what we stand for. We need to change our beliefs. We need to change our behavior. There are many things we can change in terms of behavior, like the way we do our work, the way we relate to one another, like the way we are having a meeting now. We are used to physical meetings. So we need to change all those things. It is recommended that the change takes place gradually, baby steps. Although we have already been put in a corner by this sudden change, as it evolves, we should continuously endeavor to change, to cope up, because we should also remember that culture is not static. Culture is dynamic. It should always be changing continuously. We should also create a family culture. What do I mean? We mean that you should have a culture where everybody in the organization feels that the other person next to them, the CEO, whoever it is, cares for them. It should not be a culture of us versus them. It should be a culture where everybody feels connected, where everybody feels part of, where everybody feels they belong. The culture should be agile, adaptive, business culture. This is a culture that allows an organization to adapt very, very quickly. You can see the way we are required to change very, very quickly these days. So to adapt very, very quickly and to meet customer requirements and demands. For example, if the customer wants you to call them on a Zoom meeting, you cannot start saying, no, I don't understand that. How is that done? Blah, blah, blah. It's up to you to just find out how that can be done, adjust, and just basically putting in place mechanisms and measures that will enable you do your business during these times. You should also look at your core values, because the core values determine what you stand for. I think we've already said that. The leadership should model the culture. It is very, very important that the leadership in an organization shows the others what their culture in the organization is. For example, if our culture here is that we should greet one another, okay, now we are not greeting. If we hug one another in the morning when we meet, or it should be we dress in a certain way, or we don't write rude emails to one another. The leadership must model that. They are part of the team. It's the only way that everybody else is going to do it. You should have a consultative culture. It should be involving to everyone in the organization, regardless of what they do, what they are ranked, whatever it is, everyone should be involved. It should also have a culture with empathy and compassion, especially at this time. People really need we really need to empathize with those who we are working with in our organizations, and to show a lot of compassion. It is also important and recommended that you identify culture champions. These are individuals who will model to the others what is really desired of in terms of culture in the organization, so that they will continuously show the others what they are supposed to do by doing it themselves, and encouraging others to join them and be the same, so that you are all part of the team. You should build a team culture. I think we've said that. And you should also, it's important and recommended that you recognize and reward positive behavior. And what we mean here is that those individuals in the organization who live the culture, who espouse what the organization culture is, it's important and necessary to recognize that as a way of motivating the others and encouraging the others to behave in the same way by rewarding them. You should also fail and celebrate together. Many are times when we hide failure. We do not want our juniors to know exactly what the organization is going through. but we probably want to really scream off, celebrate on top of the roof when we have succeeded. But you should be both, because human beings are bound to fail and they are bound to succeed. So just be natural, be a human being. Do not endeavor to be a supernatural. Just let everybody know that you are a human being, and just be vulnerable. That is what it's all about. Encourage informal interactions, encourage people to meet on social gatherings, encourage informal meetings, and that is why in organization you should encourage things like team building, things like coffee meetings, by even having some small coffee breaks in the organization where you have people meet and interact informally. And that also helps build and entrench the organization culture. You should also entrench relationships and not transactions. Many a times when we just want the business done, we do not care how it is done. We just want to have what we are set out to achieve achieved. But in terms of workplace culture, it is encouraged that you entrench relationships where I care about you, you care about me, even as we go about our work. Next, I would like to go to workplace safety. This is just about ensuring that the workplace is safe as we go about doing our work. And some of the things that we can look at is we need to review our workplace policies and procedures to align them with the current laws, the current government guidelines, and even the way we are just doing things right now, like how are we going to be having meetings, who is going to be working from home, just looking at all the guidelines in the organization to ensure that they talk to the times that we are living in. It's also important to have a plan. What happens if if something happens, if an employee is sick, has COVID, for example, how do we go about it? Where are they supposed to be taken to hospital? Who is responsible, etc., etc. You should also remember prevention is better than cure. Let's do the thing that will keep the disease away, rather than waiting for it to happen and then we start running helter-skelter. You should also ensure that the workplace is clean and hygienic. That is straightforward. We should promote regular and thorough hand washing by employees, contractors, visitors, customers, etc. This has been drilled into us, and I cannot say much more about it. We should promote good respiratory hygiene in the workplace. Ensure, just keep telling people what we are being told every day, that when you're coughing, you cover your mouth. When you're sneezing, you cover your nose and mouth, etc., etc., just to ensure that this is done in the workplace. And these things I'm talking about can be done even by use of posters at the workplace, by use of sending out memos, by use of teams, creating teams with the leaders that will constantly remind the people what they are supposed to do. We should also provide personal protective equipment. We've heard a lot about that. I don't need to belabor the point. We should check our employees and customers' body temperature at entry point, very familiar now. We should consider employees' age profile. Remember, COVID is said to affect people who are older more than the young people. So let's be cognizant of the age profile of our employees and just be aware so that we are able to put measures in place to deter the spread of this disease. We should identify high-risk employees and take action. High-risk employees are people who, for example, keep the files, they are touching these files, they are handling these files. We should know that they are high risk. The tea makers also, for example, they are high risk, and we need to take pay special attention to them, so that we reduce the exposure. We should introduce flexi teleworking arrangements. That is happening in many organizations, and we need to just entrench that in our policies and our internal procedures, etc., etc. We should discontinue use of biometrics and attendance registers. That is breeding ground for COVID, so take note and act on that. We should create a conducive work environment so that if I'm not feeling well, I'm able to tell Mumo, for example, I've reported to work today and I'm not feeling well, can I leave? And so that I don't feel like, I shouldn't say that. Now, if I start saying that, this will happen. So it should be a conducive, very open work environment. We should adhere to government guidelines and the Occupational Safety and Health Act 2007 provisions. That's a whole about the act. There are guidelines on what how the workplace should be, and the obligations of both the employer, what the employer should be in terms of making the workplace safe. It's a whole subject. We can deal with it another day. We should appoint individuals to oversee measures taken to implement, and this can also be done by a safety committee. One of the recommendations of OSHA 2007 is to have a safety committee in place. It also says how regularly that committee should be meeting, etc., etc. We should be open-minded to feedback. I already said that. And there are many other measures. These are just the ones I could think of on top of my head. Employee medical scheme. This is a benefit that is given to employees by the employer. And in order to have an effective medical scheme, the following measures may be considered. We should set aside resources where possible. Let us endeavor deliberately to set aside resources for this scheme. We should consult employees when we before we set out this medical scheme for them. And this is important because many times when organizations are coming up with employee benefits, they think and decide on behalf of the employees, which is wrong. Because I'll give you an example. If I tell Sam that he needs a medical, I'll give him a medical for himself, his wife, and 2 children. He doesn't have a wife. So probably he'll give me an option that instead of me offering the benefit to his wife, probably I can offer it to his mother or his dad or whoever. The other example I'd like to give is when you decide on employee benefits, they have their own perspective. Probably I want to put in a mortgage scheme. They don't want a mortgage scheme. Probably they want to buy a Subaru. So it's always important to consult employees to get feedback from them so that you put in place something that will be of benefit to the employees, not what you think will be of benefit to them. You should also be flexible and open-minded. Talked about that before. We should explore available options in the market. There are so many available options in terms of medical scheme, which can be pocket friendly. You don't have to go to rob the bank. There are various options, and I'm sure Naum can help us in that direction. We should have a policy in place. Let it not be just today you say this, tomorrow you say the other. It's important to have something documented for reference and consistency, so that all employees enjoy the benefit in a manner that is consistent. We should create awareness of the policy once it is done. We should provide and put in place services such as counseling and wellness, especially in these times we are living in. Because these services are very, very important because employees are going through very, very difficult times, people in organizations. They have various needs which they feel are not being met. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and nobody is really sure what is going to happen. So it is very, very important to have this in place. You can also consider having a helpline And you should always endeavor to go an extra mile. Don't just say ati sisi tulikupatia 20,000 hiyo ndio yako na imeisha, sasa unataka tufanye nini? As I said, remember employees or people never forget how you treated them. And employees respect you when they see that you care for them. So endeavor to go an extra mile and treat human beings like human beings. We move on to internal policies and procedures. These are the internal guidelines. They show the way we do things around here. They dictate the way we behave in an organization. And one thing we can do around this time is to review and update them. We should also align them with the government guidelines. There are so many government guidelines that have been issued in the recent past. There are also new laws that have come into place, like the Pandemic Management and Something Act. There's also the issue about the taxation. So all these things need to be documented or put in your internal guidelines. We should also, in terms of the relevant scope to consider, I looked at the emerging issues like home working, what you can consider when you're doing your work policies and procedures, issues of wearing masks and gloves, sanitizing, how often to sanitize, who will do it, who will oversee it, social distancing, what do we mean by social distancing in this organization, how do we rearrange our seating arrangement, etc., document all that. Virtual meetings, how they will be held. Remember, you also need to facilitate employees. Don't assume every employee has got Wi-Fi. You need to go into the detail and just find out who needs to be facilitated. You need to document how body temperature will be checked, where it will be checked, who will be responsible, what will be done in case it is felt that the temperature is too high, and how it will be done, how illness will be reported, how what is isolation for the organization, and how will that be handled, how will work be handled for the individual who goes into isolation. What about return to work? When one has fallen sick and comes back to work, how will they be treated? How will they be brought back into the workplace? What about issues of stigmatization and all that? Contact person, communication source, let communication come from one official source, not everybody, otherwise you'll have very many versions of the same story, of the same information. You need one source that can be trusted. And so on and so forth. You also need in your internal policies and procedure to talk about the role of technology and facilitation. I think I've mentioned that. You need to talk about employment terms and conditions. One thing that will emerge by the time we finish this is that we'll all have realized that we don't need employees to work from 8 to 5. Because I'm sure some people have already realized that actually what I have been doing between 8 and 5, I can do it in 2 hours, and therefore I'll be able to attend to my work at XYZ company, and also do some other personal or hustle. Like I can do 1, 2, 3 for Mumo or somebody else, or Brian. You can multitask in other things. The terms of employment as we know them are going to change. Basically, that is what I'm saying. You should also document how performance will be measured. This is a very gray area right now, but as people work from home, we need to think about how will we look at performance and how will it be measured in terms of recognizing whether we have achieved or not achieved, and so on and so forth. Pressed for time. There's also the issue of organization design. We need to look at, basically the organization design is a pictorial presentation of how activities are undertaken in an organization. It outlines the roles, the jobs, the chain of command, etc., etc. And the factors to be considered in organization design are Factors to be considered include, I think I've mixed up my presentation, one of the whatever, but anyway, factors to be considered is type of organization that you are working in, or your organization, the mandate of your organization. You just need a functional organizational structure, which will enable you to carry out your mandate, do your work, your business in an effective manner, facilitate communication. It should not be bureaucratic like we have seen the government organization structures are. Now things need to move fast. They need to be very, very fast. So you need an organization structure that will facilitate that. One of the things to consider is how fast can decisions be made? How can this organization structure that we are considering facilitate decision making and a workflow in the organization? So these are very big subjects. It's something that can be discussed, and I'm open to further discussion should anybody want to take it up, because I don't want to eat into the other person's time. So to close it, quote of the day: always treat your employees exactly as you want them to treat your best customers. Remember, your employees are the contact person with your best customers, and they will treat your best customer exactly the same way you treat them. So always endeavor to treat your employees the very same way you'd want them to treat your very best. Unajua yule customer huyo hutaki aguswe na mtu. Always think about it, the relationship between yourself, your best customer, and the employees and the best customer. So thank you so much. I hope I have not eaten into Max's time. I really rushed. I hope I'm okay. Over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for that detailed information. So no one is curious to ask Elizabeth anything. Anyway, if any question pops up, you can always leave it in the question and answer section, and Elizabeth will be staying on and she'll be happy to answer those. So
sorry, I really had to rush, but I'm available to always recoup and clarify a point if somebody is not clear about anything. They can always reach me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Maxi, we are ready for you. Maxi is not available. So Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. And
okay.
In my industry, I work a lot with casuals.
Yeah.
So there is no contract, there is nothing ties us together.
Yeah.
But just out of concern, is there are there any regulations, especially from a legal point of view, and in regards with the pandemic, away from the social and the humanity and all that, just from a legal point of view on how you should handle and what needs to be done for this team?
In terms of engaging the casuals, the people who work for you?
In terms of engaging them, in terms of even service benefits, if there is no contract, like what can you do and what is allowable or not allowable from a legal perspective?
I think if I heard you right, it's like you work with casuals, people you pick for the day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and the Employment Act 2007 is very, very clear on the different categories of employees and how they should be treated. A casual, from a legal perspective, is person who you take to work for you and you pay them at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you part ways, you have no relationship. I come in, I do what we agreed I do, we'll be doing the whole day. You pay me and we part ways. The relationship is ended, the contract is over. So in terms of paying other benefits, I see none, because there is no continued relationship. I've come in, I've worked, you paid me, I've gone, that's it. And casuals are not given appointment letters. No, they are not.
Okay.
I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I see Maxi trying to get attention. Okay, she's back online.
Hey, Suzanne,
Hey,
I'm
Maxi.
here. Yes.
We are ready for you. Please carry on.
I was like, what's happening here? Okay.
I couldn't see you on the panel list. Carry
Okay.
on.
Okay, let me share. Okay, could Elizabeth kindly remove her presentation so I can share?
All right. Okay, all right.
You. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So I won't introduce myself because Susan already did. And Elizabeth, that was a wonderful, wonderful training. You really engaged me. And because of time, I'll go right into my training. So as Elizabeth has talked about, today's training is about people management. And people management is also known as human resource management. And it covers so many tasks of recruitment management and providing ongoing support and direction for the employees at the organization. And tasks can be like compensation, hiring, performance management, organization development, safety, wellness, benefits, employee motivation, communication, administration, and training. My training today is focusing on how businesses can handle their employees during this COVID pandemic. And just like Elizabeth has told us, put your employees closer than ever before. You know, communicate with them as often as you can. Check with them, you know, if they're working from home or the office. Check on them and ask how they're doing, how their loved ones are doing, are they okay? And keep telling them that this too shall pass. It's not here forever. It's something that will come to pass. So you can give them hope. So secondly, I'll highlight the 4 types of people management that that is currently being practiced, and that you as a CEO who may be wondering, how do I go about it? So the types of people management being practiced in the COVID pandemic is the flexi time or flex time. And the second one is work sharing or job sharing. The third one is remote or teleworking or telecommuting. And number 4 is salary review. Flexi time or flex time. This is a workplace scheme. When you say a scheme, is that it's an employer developed. It's where the employer has said my business model should have this kind of, you know, working hours. So it's a scheme between an employer and the employee to work within a set number of hours, setting the time frame from when the hours take effect to when it ends. Like for example, you can say flex time will begin when work begins, and to be between 7 to 10. So someone 7 to 10, you can report within that time, between 7 to 10, but you must be at the office between 10 a.m. to noon. That's the core time that you say this is crucial. You must be at the office between these hours. And then lunch break can be flexible. And then again, a core time like between 2 to 4, you must be at the office. And then 4 to 7 flex time, you can now say you can leave after 4 or thereafter. So it means that the hours that your employee works between these times, the flexi time and the core time, they're credited to your flexi time balance. This means that you also have a policy that covers flexi time balance, because with most schemes, there's a credit limit and a debit limit, often between 8 hours. And with these 8 hours, for example, if you work a 35-hour week, then over 4 weeks, you'll be obliged to work for 140 hours. But if you work more than those hours that the employer requires you to work, then you'll be in a credit. But if you work lower, it will be a deficit. And if you exceed that, sometimes you can overdo the credit and exceed those two. You may not be compensated because you have overdone the credit limit. But if you go below now the credit limit, like a deficit, then you might lose your pay or have to use up your annual leave and make the difference or be disciplined. So, so why is this a very good scheme? It's because sometimes employees, even for the employer too, you can turn that time off that you have into an extra day or two earned, which is something very, attractive for even a future employee, or employees would love to work for your organization based on these flexi time hours. And the benefits to employers, I can't stress enough. Sometimes how employees come in and say, I had to go to the doctor or a dentist, during working hours. Or sometimes they say, traffic was so bad, I was stuck in traffic. That is something that employers don't want to, hear about. So flex time can help you cover for such excuses. And then sometimes it's also an incentive for employees to work, more so that they can have those extra days. It makes them work even better and say, hey, let me give my all to this work. I know I'll get a day or two extra, which I can do 1, 2, 3, 4 in my personal time. And the benefits to your employees is because now they'll have free time to do activities that crop in or steal company time. So now that also caters for that. It also avoids stress, especially with the traffic jams. Employees can get to work when there are no traffic jams, and it makes them not stressed. They come to work relaxed and ready to work and give their all. So that is the benefits to the employee. But the disadvantages sometimes of flexi time is that if not monitored properly, employees can take advantage of it. For example, if your flexi time is someone can come record on a piece of paper, or maybe you require them to do a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet by stuff, that will not work. And sometimes also flex time can be given to the HR department, and that can be a lot more workload for them and may bog them down. So the best thing you can go about with flexi time is invest in a software that will be able to monitor how your employees come to work. So flexi time, in a nutshell, is employees will come to work at the hours between hours that are flexible for them to be at work, the core time supposed to work, and the time they're supposed to leave. Yeah, so I hope that is clear. And how do you manage this? As Elizabeth has talked about, practice the COVID, what the government has said about COVID. Make sure there's enough space between the employees and all that. I won't stress on that anymore. So the next one is job sharing. It's also called work sharing. And this one, it normally affects employees who work on hourly rates or daily wages. And this job sharing is not very common in Kenya, but abroad, Canada, whereas it is common, where people share, and then the government, it's a way of people not losing their jobs because they've been removed from full-time to part-time. So the government comes in and subsidizes where the employer pays a certain small fee, and also the government pays a small fee, so that now the people can still be employed, though on reduced hours. But with time, I think this is something that will come to Kenya, and people will do job sharing, because it's where you split a job where someone does a job 8 to 5, and maybe it's just routine kind of jobs, and you pay them all this full-time salary and the benefits. I am for benefits because I'm for employee wellness, but I think moving forward with this pandemic, we have to look for ways that will be sustainable for businesses, and where you can also be fluid and say, hey, I am a good employer. I want my employees to work, but this is how, moving forward, the policy will come in effect so that it can help people who I care about have jobs, but still, on reduced work time, but still have jobs. It's a win-win for both the employer and employee. So, the employer is in charge of monitoring and evaluating how the employees work. And how can it improve? How is it a benefit for the employer? First and foremost, it improves retention by offering an alternative that may appeal to many workers. Then many workers will be like, damn, 8 to 5 is such long hours, you know, and after that, you know, they have to do like what Elizabeth has said, their side business. So they're like, I would really love an ideal work time place where I'll just go in for maybe 5 good solid hours, give my all and leave, you know, that kind of work. So it's a good retention for that kind of, you know, people who just want to have a part-time job. And it also reduces absenteeism and tardiness because of the flexibility offered. And it also gives workers time to deal with family and other personal responsibilities, which will not crop into your time that you pay them to work. And however, some of the disadvantages of job sharing will be people will need more additional supervisory time, possible disruption of workflow, because sometimes now you'll see that someone coming in part-time, again, you know, they'll be there for a short, do their work, leave, and then again, someone else will come in and now continue with that job. So now you have to find out, okay, where did this person stop? Handing over, you know, this can take a bit of time, you know, to pick up the speed. And also communication sometimes, because now it's 2 people, you gotta communicate, and you know, and sometimes someone may not be available when you need them to be available. So that also can also drag the communication process. And also scheduling challenges for training and meetings. Yeah, remember, if maybe you want to train employees and they're on part-time, you really have not to find out, hey, Maxi, so when are you free to come in for this training? Because remember, they're only coming for a set time and then they go do their personal work. So you really have to sit down and, you know, agree on when you can have the trainings or even meetings. And sometimes as an employer, you want to have impromptu meetings. That too can be a bit of our challenge, but it's not something that you cannot work around if you have a good policy in place. So good policies are very good for this kind of work arrangement. And for employers too, you can reconsider job sharing if you're not ready to employ people on a full-time basis for low-level jobs. And even though it's a new concept in Kenya for employers, that does not mean that you cannot embrace it. It's something I think moving forward after this, people will embrace it more. Okay, so the third one is remote or teleworking or telecommuting. This is work designed in a way that employees do not commute or travel to a central place of work, such as an office building, a warehouse, or store. And the benefits of this are said to be increased performance, increased profitability, increased engagement, increased retention, increased productivity. I think you can see that it cuts across the board with flexi time, with also job sharing, in terms of you're working when you're most productive. And when you're most productive, you're very attentive, you're, you know, detail oriented, you really concentrate on what you're doing. So you give it your all. And in that way, the employer too is able to, you know, make profits. Employees are more engaged in their work. So you see that there's more creativity and innovation to bring out suggestions on how a work can be done better. Even retention. I mean, people are now looking for, like you say, people are now looking, we're not going back to normal. People now want to work more than one job. So they'll be like, if I have a good job, 5 solid hours and another one for another 3 solid hours, I'm good to go. So that is something that can be looked into. And increased productivity. I mean, that is the time with flexi time, people are working when they are at their optimum levels. So yeah. So with this remote, what should employers have? Employers should have, again, policies on how to get to ensure that this is followed well, monitored properly, and make sure, like what Elizabeth has said, I can't stress it further. If your employees are working from home, make sure at least you're also giving them the tools they need to perform the job. If they don't have Wi-Fi, could you kindly provide, you know, something, a stipend to make them, you know, get Wi-Fi, and also airtime. In case you need to call them, they need to call you, give them to an airtime allowance so you can be in communication. And also with that, with that policy that will come in place, make sure it's very, you know, it's I can't say foolproof because it can be foolproof as such, but let it be very detailed, that anything is well taken care of, especially with company portals, the protocols involved. IT guys will help you with that for sure. Okay, and salary reviews. I know you did salary reviews. Sorry about that. Most of you most likely did salary reviews during this period. Maybe you are thinking of, as an employer, okay, now with the hard economic times, I will slash their, you know, I will slash my employees' salary, maybe give them a pay cut of 50%, you know, and not the regular one. And like Elizabeth has stressed, do not make decisions of this nature, especially around salaries, by your own. No, that is not right. It is important to call, like she said, a baraza, a meeting, and say, hey, my employees, this is, you know, tough times you're facing, you know, and we are suggesting 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, how do you feel about it, you know, give your suggestions. And even if, you know, they'll say, no, please don't cut, or, you know, please let us maybe come in part-time hours or whatever. And for you, you also feel, despite them coming for few hours or anything, your business will still suffer. You'll say, okay, despite it all, I may have to reduce your salary. Thank you for your suggestions, but the bottom line is we need to at least just cut costs. And then you ask the employees to, are you ready at least for a 50% cut? If they're not, then, you know, maybe say, kindly reconsider and think about it, because it's the only way forward. It's not gonna last, it's gonna change. After this, we will revert to the old pace. Don't do it just across the board and cut. And then another thing, follow government guidelines. You cannot reduce an employee's salary. Yeah, even on your restructuring, if people on contracts, they need to have an agreement whereby you're coming up and say, okay, it's gonna be this way. Employees should know it's gonna take effect when, based on the government, also consider the taxation and all that the government has also, you know, government circulars and gazetted, you know, information. And then make sure that in that agreement too, employers are clear on when it's gonna start, or when it's gonna end, how it's gonna be implemented, and when it's gonna stop, and they are assured of getting back what they used to earn. You know, because mostly salary reviews are about performance appraisal. Right now, it's not about performance appraisals. Everyone, the employer, employee is hurting at the moment. So make sure you involve them as much as you can, so you don't run into legal problems. And yeah, for me, I think that's it. I won't belabor it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Maxi. Very detailed as well. I can see we have some questions popping up. Okay, so Maxi, just before you leave, I'd like you to answer this one. And it's from Alex Gatoto.
Okay.
And it's very interesting, actually, because now when we need to work from home, we also need to track what we are doing from home and what our team is doing from home. Yeah, we need to be accountable. So he's asking,
yes,
he uses a tracking software to measure his employees' productivity and to ensure that they cover the 40 hours per week as required. However, he's also able to view what they are working on in their laptops. Is this great for productivity or massive invasion of privacy?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, why would you check on what they're doing? Okay, I think, okay, we can't help it as employers. We need to know that these people are working. I understand where you're coming from, Alex, but let me give you a better way of doing it. Instead of snooping into their work and seeing if they're really working, could you set expectations with your employees? Just giving them that is not enough. How about working hours, response time? If, you know, working hours, response time, when I need you to respond on something, and then inform your boss, make sure that they tell you an availability times when they're not available, you know? And then you as an employer, you have a check-in time whereby you'll be doing one-to-one meetings weekly action review meetings, and end of day check-in, you know? And then 3, use video conferencing meetings, you know, when you're doing a meeting after to review their work. And then 4, know the strengths of your team members. This, I think, in fact, this is so key. Know the strength of your workers. You'll know, Maxi, I've been calling this time and I see around this time she can't pick up her phone, but around this time is when she's, you know, on her optimum levels. That is how you can gauge. So it doesn't stress you to always look at what they're doing. Make them also have that autonomy to feel the responsibility, you know, the responsibility of doing that job, and you as the employer having all these check-ins to make sure that everything is being done. I can share this again if you want me to. Yeah, so I hope I've come out clear with that, Suzanne.
Yes, you have, but also in Alex's defense, I think the applications that are used give you that possibility to be able to actually see. They're able to track what you're doing. They're able even to track if you logged in and you stayed idle and then logged out at the end of the day.
Yes.
So I think this is what he means, that he's actually able to see, like to really be on their backs. Yeah, but also from your explanation, I think what you mean is even if you're able to do that, don't do it. Let them not feel like you're constantly behind their ears or behind their neck, and follow through with the weekly reviews that you've mentioned.
Exactly.
Alex, if you're
exactly. So it doesn't stress you. Yeah, it's good because it doesn't stress you like, damn, she is playing games when she should be working, you know? Set those limits of whereby, okay, at the end of the day, I want to report 1, 2, 3, 4. Where is it? You know, have those end of day meetings and say, how was your product, to gauge that productivity level too, so you don't get stressed about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we have another one from Brian. He's asking, what do you suggest about the changing roles and responsibility for your employees about this time, and realizing that some of your employees are not as flexible?
The changing roles of employees. For example, I think I need to have at least a case in point so I can be able to, you know, say what kind of a worker it is. Is it a middle, low level, or senior? That way I can be able to give. But overall, if they cannot have flexibility, is it from working from home or from coming to work? I need to understand that.
Okay, so I think Brian needs to clarify that question.
Yeah.
All right. So, question from Diana Mutiso.
Can I changia
my question
that?
Is, sorry?
I'd like to changia on that question you were just asked
Brian's
about.
question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yeah, what I would think is that roles have definitely changed, regardless of where you are in any organization. Roles have changed. I'm sure some of you listening to this are finding themselves doing things that they were not doing hitherto before the setting of the situation we are in. And as I said during my presentation, we have been forced to change. However, we should also realize that human beings do not like change. That's the nature of the human being. We do not like change at all. So, and that's why I said, even in terms of changing things in the organization, you need to take baby steps. You need to reassure people that yes, we are here already, and this is the direction we are going, but there is hope. There is hope at the end of the tunnel. Keep talking to them, keep reassuring them, and keep telling them that what they find themselves doing in these times is because of the situation that the organization has found itself in. And in terms of flexibility, everyone has to be flexible. Remember, there's nothing you can do about an idea whose time has come. There's nothing you're going to do about working from home right now, or being flexible to work from from home. It has to happen. There's no two way about it. So it's just about quickly adjusting to the situation, taking our positions and moving forward. It's adjusting the mindset. It's about moving forward, and so on and so forth. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't have physical meetings. We can't have 8 to 5 work arrangements now. They are on their deathbed, and so on and so forth. It's about here and now. It's about the future. That's what I would like to say.
Okay, thank you, Liz. So this now takes me back to your presentation, where you said we first have to form a structure and a system of communication. So ideally, you should have a new set of your organizational rules, the do's and don'ts. So if this person, after all factors considered, is still not willing to be flexible, then this can come into action.
Yes, definitely, yes, because once you've taken the person, you've done all that you need to do, then now you resort to the next course of action, which would be to take them through a disciplinary procedure and ensure you follow it to the letter. And then if there's need to separate, then you separate.
Great, thank you. Brian, I hope that was clear for you. You can let us know in the comments.
Okay, Susan, but before, also, sorry, Brian.
Okay.
Sorry, Susan. Yeah, but even on top of what Elizabeth has said, I really, for me, the last option for me is always to let employees go, because I feel it. You know, in these times, everyone needs that job and a source of income. So I think it's so important for that communication to really be pumped into employees. These are the times. This is changing. This is what. If you don't comply to this, then maybe, you know, you're not being flexible and fluid to change enough with the times. Please kindly talk to them, do all this counseling before you do that last, you know, stage of exiting them from the organization by disciplinary and then exit. Because sometimes employees with that change comes fear. You know, there's so much fear of everything, of losing their jobs, fear of so many fears, you know. So before that, kindly take them through that process. And when you see that indeed this person is not willing to be flexible and change, then you can take that last resort of discipline and exiting them from the organization.
Okay, thank you, Maxi. So Tom is also asking, just staying in the line of remote working, Tom is asking, should your employees disclose other jobs that they are doing apart from your job?
Elizabeth, you want to go first? I know. Do you want to go first as I think about it?
That is certainly interesting. We are coming from that era where even our appointments letter had that clause that you shall not hold any other job without authorization.
Yeah.
But as I said during my presentation, that is, it's on its deathbed. And if Maxi, for example, tells me that she has done the work the work she does in 8 hours, she has completed it in 2 hours, and even sent it to me via WhatsApp or whatever other means. How will I stop her from working from Susan, for example? How will I stop her? What criteria will I use to stop her? Because they will be engaged on another platform. And really, she has already delivered on what she set out to do, what I expected her to do. So why should I stop her from working for Chege or whoever else she wants to work for? It's gone. It's gone. Yes. It's the bitter truth. It's the reality, and we need to start working with it. Realizing it's here and thinking about how we are going to start revising our employment letters, because it's here to stay.
Yes, I agree. And you know what? Honestly, things have changed. People now will be looking for 2 jobs or 3 jobs, like abroad now. It's gonna change the working space, because that one job that you're relying on, sometimes now people have seen, look, COVID, I've just been let go just because, you know, I've been a loyal, you know, employee of this organization, and suddenly my employer thinks that I'm, you know, that I can have a pay card and stuff like that. People now, it's a revolution of people realizing, hey, people have stronger goals, people want wealth, people want to, you know, better living standards for themselves, people want all the best in life, and you just can't have it with one job, you know. So just like abroad, we'll be holding on 2 to 3 jobs, and I think that is what now employers' mindset should be shifting towards, you know. For sustainability, people can't just have one job. You need more than one job to sustain yourself in these current times and the future. So be open-minded.
I'm also thinking,
I'd like to say is that the salaries as we know them, they are also going to phase out. We are going to be having more of performance-related pay. You give me this task, I do it, I accomplish, you pay me, we part ways. So the monthly salaries, the pay slips as we know them, they are also on their way.
Yeah, I was going to add that, Liz, especially if you have reviewed your salary, allow this person to earn from elsewhere, if possible, as long as it does not affect the job description that they have now. So what I am doing with my team is communicate beforehand what is required for the week or for the 2 weeks ahead, so they can make available time even when they engage in other jobs. So you don't have you're not at loggerheads at some point. But I would say it's the same thing. Allow them to get employment elsewhere or to get a job elsewhere, as long as it adds up to their salaries. So Tom, that's it. Okay. So now we have a question from Margaret Kenyanjui, and she's asking, from the statutory point of view, if an organization ceases operations temporarily, which many of us have, and there is no active payroll for like 9 months, how do you remain compliant with the statutory deductions?
I think for me, I would suggest that you engage with organizations like NHIF, NSSF. However, remember the Employment Act has not changed, unfortunately. The statutory requirements are still there, pandemic or no pandemic. So I think it would be a what you call a gentleman's agreement between you and maybe NSSF or NHIF to agree on how you handle that. But the most important bit to note is that the Employment Act 2007 states very clearly what the statutory deductions are and how it shall be done.
Wow, okay. So there's also another one from Mr. Anonymous. I've noticed there is a good talent out there. Will it be advisable to hire the good talent right now, or should I hire contractual or permanent?
Please don't think about permanent jobs anymore.
Not anymore, yeah. Yeah, please.
As I
said, these times.
Throw that off the roof.
Yeah, just do a 3 months first, gauge performance. If they're very good at what they do, extend another 3 months, and then give maybe 2-year contract. You know, nowadays work is not permanent. Even for you as an employer, permanent comes with so many responsibilities, medical insurance, you know, if there's a pension, you're also going to pay to the pension, you know, it has very many responsibilities as an employer. Right now, CEOs, it's time to be fluid and very, very flexible with the employees. Short-term contracts will serve you well to also gauge if truly they may be smart out there, but when maybe they come on board, there's something totally different. So a 3 months contract will save you. And then if you like their job, then just extend another 3 months for 6, and then engage them now on a maybe 2-year contract. Yes, progressively.
All right.
Yeah, so probably to answer on whether this is the right time, yes, indeed it is the right time, because there are so many job losses out there, and you will be able to negotiate the terms of engagement clearly. It is advantageous to you as an employer.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So what changes in HR do you see will be permanent even after post-COVID crisis? I think by now we can all agree that permanent employment is phasing out.
Mm.
So besides that, are there any other changes that you foresee being permanent?
Yes, of course, there are several. I can name a few and Maxi can name others.
Mm-hmm.
There's of course the issue of the employment terms of engagement, the terms of engagement. As I have said a couple of minutes before, we will see the phasing out of the salary. It will be more performance related pay. I've told you, we've agreed you do this, you've done it, so I pay you, we part ways. Performance related pay, or in other words, what you might look at as project based. This is the assignment, do this assignment, we finish the assignment, we pay you, we part ways. The other thing is, of course, the traditional working hours, 8 to 5. The traditional week, Monday to Friday, gone. Gone. People will work on Sunday, they will work at night, they will work when they can work. The physical workplace has obviously will obviously change. It will never be the same as we have always known it, as we have always treasured it. It will not be the same. And of course, there will be the extensive use of technology. Maxi?
Oh yeah, but you've covered most of them. I also see the
role of the supervisor will also change tremendously.
I think there'll be now flatter organizations in terms of this, I don't know, all these hierarchies of jobs.
The organization tires.
Flat, very flat. Yeah, and I see now a place whereby will be flexible working hours, like what Elizabeth has said, and people now having policies and procedures on this work sharing, job sharing, they'll come into place. So I mean, Elizabeth has basically, covered it all, but its organizations now will just restructure, no more organizational structure, just flat.
I think the other thing I would like to say is that largely organizations will outsource the HR function. So Maxi, let's use ourselves for the work. Very few organizations will continue to have internal human resource managers. That I can tell you for free.
All right, thank you, ladies. So Diana continues to ask, she has one employee at the shop and they have temporarily closed because of the pandemic. Does she still pay her full salary and there is no income coming in from the shop nor from herself?
Diana, as we've discussed, I hope you've sat down with your employee and told her about this current situation. Yeah. Maybe you've done, okay, I don't know if your shop is completely closed. Maybe have you considered she just comes for an hour or two? I don't know what your working arrangement is, but you can tell her at the moment to take paid leave or unpaid leave, whatever leave that she had accumulated. I hope you've dealt with that first, yeah? Because that is what currently even the government is urging employers to sit down with the employees and agree if they'll take unpaid leave, if they have no leave days, and if they have leave days to proceed on leave. And after that, if the COVID still continues, then you can also sit down and agree, how do we revise your salary? Because I can't afford it anymore. So do you decide then to pay cut, or do you decide then, kindly let's pay cut, and then till it opens, we'll now review your salary again to the full pay that I used to pay you. That's what I would advise. Elizabeth?
No, I think you've covered this. It's about consultation and agreement, and just convincing the other party that you cannot, it's not sustainable, and agreeing the way forward. Consultation, very, very important and documented.
Okay, so this conversation is going really great. We've gone over time, but we still have a lot of questions to go through. So Maxi and Liz, if you're comfortable staying on and answering, we'll go ahead. with Kerubo's question, which is a transition from Diana's. Kerubo is asking, should we have a signed agreement with the employee about the salary cut?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Remember, it needs to be documented. Yes, 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 you must. And you must also document the consultation.
Yes, document it. Make sure she signs that it's a sign of agreement and she's understood the terms of service, you know? Documentation, agreement. That's the way to go.
Okay. So Bernard is asking, after COVID, business may not go back to normal immediately. And since employees would expect their previous salary as they'll be back to work, how can that be handled?
Sorry, go Max, go.
Sorry. I hope, Bernard, that you sat down with your employees and discussed, yeah, if their salaries will be, okay, how their salaries will be affected during this COVID season. Yeah, I hope you did that beforehand. And if maybe you've sent them away on unpaid leave or paid leave, or hopefully, you know, you had an agreement. I hope that agreement, okay, it seems like you didn't have that agreement, but kindly communicate. Communication is key, guys. Don't do things in privacy, and just communicate and tell guys as is. Maybe your salaries will not go back as they used to. Kindly, and the business is doing well, we will take the following measures, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and even maybe you'll state that in the meantime, salaries will also be frozen. There's no increment, even if, you know, based on performance, so the business can go back to where it was before COVID. And then that is when now we can relook into that salary, you know, your former salary. I think that is the best way. Engage them, and be honest about it and say, we can't afford it right now. But once we resume, at the moment, everything will be as is, or it's frozen until business is back to normal. Thank you.
Okay, so Stephen says, thank you, Maxi and Liz, for the great presentation. My question is to you both. How do we ensure that we effectively recruit during this time?
Elizabeth?
Let's recruit to
the back to recruitment. Stephen Mwangi is asking, how do we ensure that we effectively recruit during this time?
I guess the recruitment procedure remains largely the same. Prepare the job specification, you know, very clearly, send it out to the social media, engage Maxi to recruit for you, identify the best talent for the job, and negotiate the terms of engagement. It's basically, that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed at all. And as I said earlier, this is actually the best time to recruit.
All right, so Samuel Getal asks, how do we ensure that employees uphold organizational culture in this very virtual working environment? I think Sam, I can start by saying you need to speak to Alex and see what he's doing for his organization and how he's able to keep track, and Liz and Maxi can add.
Culture always starts from the top. You as the leader of the organization, culture is you first, and it trickles down to your employees. So it's for you as an employer to set the pace for the culture that you want to continue during this COVID season, and your employees will pick up on that for sure.
And I think just to add on that, you remember you used to have physical meetings at 4 points, and we gladly met there at 6:30. Now we have a new culture, which has been, which has worked very well for all of us. We meet virtually online. It's a culture. You can tell who is ready, who has joined, who has not joined. The meeting goes on as it's supposed to be. It's a culture, and we continue to engage virtually. The culture has transformed, has changed. Remember when I said earlier that culture is also not static. It changes to fit with the times. So don't think about culture as the physical presence of the employees, but as a way of doing things, our beliefs, our behaviors, the way we interact, and so on and so forth. That is the culture.
Great. So Nico Ganja says, it looks like we have to change the employees' job descriptions. Employment terms need to be adjusted.
Yeah, certainly. In my view, yes, I think you need to review the job descriptions as you review your policies, as you review the organization design. Remember, the job description ties up to with the organization design. So it's a whole chain reaction, and yes, you need a review. You need to look inside and in your house, in your processes, everything, and just do an overhaul. Or is it what I am seeing, somebody saying that you need to sanitize?
Okay, so Nico Ganzo needs help on how to go about changing these terms. Is it something that you're able to go over and give a few tips, probably?
Elizabeth, strategic, yeah?
We can look at it, no problem. We can look at it. We can look at what he has and what his proposal is and what the law says, and we fit in there. It's doable.
Okay. So there is your referral for the week, Nick. All right. So, Savambwaya, if we agree with my employees that I will pay them 50%, how do I treat payee now? Should I remit only for the 50%? And is there a chance that KRA would query this at some point in future, demanding more, etc., etc.? So because the salary is tied to many other obligations which operate independently as independent institutions, how do you go about that?
I think, as I said earlier, when we were discussing about statutory deductions, of course, the law is there and states very clearly how that should be done. But again, the law had not foreseen what we are in. I don't even think the new Disaster and Pandemic Something Act has addressed that issue. But if I'm in that situation, as I said earlier, I would walk myself to NSSF and say, these are the agreements I have with my employees. This is the current situation I am in my organization, my business. And I have therefore changed I'm not paying them 100%, I'm paying them 50%, which means I might not be able to remit the deductions for now. So can I be granted a holiday? And I think it's doable. Nothing is really impossible. It's a mindset, it's about discussion, and it's about agreements and chatting a way forward. So personally, that is what I would do.
Yeah.
Maxi?
Yes. I was about to say that it's important to have those key contacts in NHIF, NSSF, KRA. It's so key so that you can always be communicating with them. Yeah, get some key contacts, and also so you can get advice from them firsthand, those who are already there. Yeah, it will help you greatly for your business. Have a contact NHIF, NSSF, and KRA. But also, like Liz has said, communication. Go there to them and tell them, hey, I have these agreements. I won't even belabor it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brian asks, or rather states, is it accurate to assume that it will be harder to maintain and implement company culture remotely? And if yes, are there any tips that one can?
It will. Sorry. I'll just state this briefly. I hope I've understood. Susan, let me rephrase. Is he asking if it is going to be harder to monitor organizational culture remotely?
Yes.
Like I said, the pace is with you, the leader of the organization. Whatever norms you guys used to do, no matter what the cultures that you had before then, please don't leave them behind. Carry them with you virtually. This virtually online, carry them with you on phone communication, carry them with you on emails that you send out, you know? That's the same. I don't think it should change. If in fact it should be better, because now we are now, you know, with internet, with technology, if you have a WhatsApp group too, that you always send your concerns, do that, continue. I think it should even be more persistent, because now you're always looking out for your employees more, you know. Proactiveness, CEOs, Brian, being more proactive to make this thing really work, because it's true, you can really slack off when things are not in the physical offices where you're so used to seeing people. I think now it's being open-minded and really being proactive in making it work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maxi. So Alex is asking, has the pandemic response, and management bill 2020 been enacted by Parliament? If it has, what are some of the things we need to look out for as employees, or rather as employers? Oh yeah, he means as employers, what do we need to look out for?
Is that the Disaster Something Act he's
Yes.
asking about? Yes, I think it is the one, and it largely touches on the relationship between the employer and the employee, about reduction of salary, and that is largely changing employment terms. I think it touches on that, and it's important to familiarize itself, because once again it talks about engagement, and it allows the employer to take action, but it also, I think, makes reference to the Employment Act. So one has to read them together so that they are sure on the way to go. But I'm usually very careful with legal counsel, because I'm not a counsel myself. I'm not an advocate of the High Court. So I think we leave that in terms of interpretation of that act and how it relates to the Employment Act, to our learned friends in the House, and hope when they come on board, they will advise us on how to go about it. Because in terms of, is that act really, has it really, there's one act which I saw like it had an issue, and I commented on the group in terms of the Bill of Rights. Now I'm confused. I don't know whether it's that one or it's another one. I don't know. Let me not commit to that, because I'm not sure, but I can check and probably respond on WhatsApp.
Okay, so Alex, I think you will need to follow up with Liz for that. And then probably you can also post it on the group so we can all learn. Okay, so Catherine Kanywa says or asks, is there a stipulated guideline for an organization to have the OSHA guidelines, that is in terms of organization size or number of employees?
Yes, there is. An organization that has got at least 25 employees must comply to OSHA, Occupational Health and Safety Guidelines. That's the requirement of the law, if I'm not correct. I think the number is 25.
Yeah.
All right, and we are done with the questions. That was very engaging. So Kerubo Nyaribo, I hope you had your response for your question. Just let me know. And that was a definite yes. You should have a signed agreement with the employees about the salary cut. All right, so the highlights we're getting here today is communication, 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 regardless of what angle you're looking at this from. Communication is the beginning of it and the end of it. Also, when you're conducting those interviews, saying that you work from home is now going to be a thing. Yes, office addresses will not be required anymore. And there will be no going back to normal, what we know as normal. Rather, there will be a new normal. So we all need to adjust to that. If any of us has any more questions, we can continue that on the chat, on our WhatsApp chat. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Maxi. It was very, very engaging and educative. Thank you, Momo, for, as always, being our admin, and for Samuel Getao for the awesome graphics that you provide us. Be on the lookout for the feedback form. Kindly share with us. We'd like to know how we can improve, what we can look out for the next training, how we can better manage. And also, I will add on the form, I will edit it and send it in a few minutes because I'd like to have a review of the time if 1 hour is really enough for that, so we can consider having a bit more time. We seem to be running out of time every time. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Maxi and Liz, for being selfless.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you, my pleasure too. Good day.
Thank you.